So we got Olaf Jorek with us. Did I
Yeah,
say that correct?
you did,
I
man.
did.
Nailed it.
All right. I got that nailed. You know, I tell you, us rednecks get it every time. I know you were in during Desert Storm and you
hmm
were in the Air Force, but tell
Yeah.
everybody what years you were in, what you did over there, and stuff like that.
All right. So, actually, I signed up when I was 17 on my 17th birthday because I had to get out of the house, and my parents signed along with me, and I was a senior in high school, and that was 1985. But I didn't join until 1986. That's when I went into basic. Um, in November of '86, actually, and then you know I was a autopilot nav instruments guy that worked on F4s at George Air Force Base in California. And so I was assigned to the 37th Tactical Fighter Wing, which became the 35th Tactical Fighter Wing. And so they wanted the 37th, I guess, to go over to the stealth. And so the Wild Weasel supported them, did my 4 years. And I was planning on getting out in November of '90, and then had an interview lined up with Delta Airlines, and it was in August. I think it was August 28th. It was either the 28th or the 26th. Um, I had my suit up in the closet, ready to go for my interview the very next day. Well, the day before, um, our our half of the shop went over to the Persian Gulf, right? And the way the Air Force works, I don't know about the Navy and the Army, but we had two different mobility teams, right? And so there was the A team and the B team. And when the A team goes out, the B team's supposed to go out 30 days later. So the A team goes out, sets everything up. The B team goes out and reinforces everything, right? And so my name was on the B list. Okay. So the A list went out on the 25th of August, or whatever, the 24th, whatever the day was. Um, and I went up to my supervisor and I was like, "Hey, I'm getting out of the Air Force. You need to get me off of that B list." And so he was like, "Yeah, we got 30 days, no problem. I'll get you off of there." So I was like, "All right, cool. Well, I got tomorrow off because I'm going to Atlanta to get my interview with Delta Airlines." Suit in the closet. I went to bed early, and all of a sudden my wife wakes me up about, I don't know what time it was, 9:30 or something like that. And it was a shop, and they said, "Grab your bag, you're leaving." And I was like, "Oh, hell no, I ain't leaving." I was like, "I got an interview with Delta Airlines tomorrow." And they're like, "Nope, sorry, the B team's going out tonight." Damn it. So I tried to talk my way out of it. Didn't happen. So went through the whole mobility thing, go in, write your will, get all the shots, blah, blah, blah. My bag, I just grabbed a bunch of stuff, man, threw it in there. I was not prepared at all because I was getting out. And so I had like, hardly any, I had just basically the essentials. And so we went out that next day and that next morning and ended up going through Saudi Arabia and went to Bahrain. That's where I was stationed over there. And we showed up, and it was just chaos, and I'm sure it's chaos for everybody. And and so we actually broke a record. It's funny because I'm rereading all these letters. I wrote a letter to my wife every day. She wrote me a letter every day, and so I'm rereading the letters right now, actually, because this podcast kind of got me thinking about it. And so I wanted to read it to see what exactly happened. And so many things that I forgot, but we were broke a record because within 24 hours we were flying our F4s over Kuwait, and so we were taunting to try to get them to do something, right? And our unit was the SAM killers. We would take out surface to air missile sites. That was our mission. And so anyway, I was just a electronics geek technician, man. That's all I did. I wasn't ever in no, combat or anything like that. So we were there, setting up all the tents and doing all that jazz and taking the malaria pills and whatever other pills. But I was only there for 60 days
Oh,
because,
really?
yeah. So I went there in late August and I got out of there in late October. And it was a whole story behind that. I mean, the time we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know if he was going to attack. And they were talking about extending everybody. And then eventually, Schwarzkopf came out and said that only certain of our, what do you guys call it, MOSs or something? We call it AFSCs.
Yeah.
Um, Only
Okay.
certain ones had to stay, right? And so there was a list that came out every week or every day, I can't remember, in the headquarters, the base headquarters, and I would go down there every day to make sure my number wasn't on that list, because I wanted to get the hell out of there. And and so anyway, I was fortunate to get out in mid October. Fortunately, my wife called Delta Airlines, and I mean, she called them and said, "Hey, this is what's going on," and they said, "We'll hold the interview for him as long as we can."
That's
So,
badass.
um, yeah. So I got back and I got my first interview even before I got out of the Air Force in November, and and then my wife was actually in the Air Force as well. That's where we met. We actually were in the same shop, and
Hmm.
and so we're one of those success stories, Air Force success stories. I know there's not a lot of them, but we've been together now for 35 years, and we've been married for 35 years.
That's
We've been together for 36.
that's
So
awesome.
Well,
thank you. So
one of the reasons for that is because she knew 30 something years later they were going to come out with a song about you.
oh yeah. Oh, on
I mean,
that,
I'm just
let me.
saying.
I gotta do a sidebar on that real quick on Disney and my name. So Olaf, right? Nobody freaking knew Olaf. I mean, I went through most of my life having to spell my name, repeat my name. I went by OJ for years until, OJ Simpson did his thing and everybody felt like they wanted to tell me all their OJ jokes. And so I
Mm.
switched back to Olaf again and it's just a pain in the ass. And so then, um, when Frozen came out, all my troubles went away, man. It was beautiful. So you could sing all you want because I love it. I love it. So, and on
That's
that too, so let me tell you another funny story. So Olaf, right? My name is actually Olaf Helmut Jorek. Okay, so that's as German as you can get right there. My parents are both from Germany. I'm first generation American, and so when they moved here and got married, they actually met here in the States. They got married and then had me first. And so they named me a very German name, thinking that they were going to move back to Germany. Well, they didn't. And so went through life Olaf Helmut Jorek. My brother came along 5 years later. By that time, they were already planning on staying here, and they named him Scott Richard Jorek. So
You got Olaf,
okay.
he got Scott. What
yeah,
the? Hey, but you didn't know your name would be popular one day, and so that's
yeah,
pretty
man.
badass, man.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. I
whenever
love it. I love it.
when you sent me the message, I was like, "Oh shit, I'm definitely gonna be singing." Do you want to build a snowman? And I mean, I was at the barber shop. I mean, I was like, "Do you want to build a snowman? You want to ride your bike down the hall?" And then I couldn't figure out the rest of it. So y'all are all very lucky today. But um, now that we're gonna, I'm gonna travel back in time, and so
yeah.
you and your wife met. Did she go over there?
No, so she ended up staying back and had to do, she was at that point she was an admin, but she was ended up being a cargo loader. So she would drive forklifts and load up all the gear and all that stuff. And so she was doing that during the whole mobility of the base. And so no, fortunately, she didn't go over there, and so she actually joined a month after I did. So after I got out, we stayed on base for another month, and then we moved to New York when I started my job with Delta Airlines in January of '91. Um, so I got back. I'm 22, just starting a new job, starting a new life. Things are just humming along, and then in 1992, um, my whole body just broke out in this crazy ass rash,
No,
and
yeah.
so I went to my doctor. They didn't know what it was, so sent me to a dermatologist. They didn't know what it was. They ended up giving me some cream or something to put on, and eventually it went away. But when that happened, it was around that same time that Gulf War syndrome was coming out in the news. And so, and this is where it gets a little bit fuzzy, but I ended up somehow finding out about a study that was happening at Fort Hamilton. It was an Army base actually up in New York, in Brooklyn, and so I got in touch with them, just to make sure, basically to make sure it wasn't anything to do with Gulf War syndrome.
Right.
Because I assumed, hey, I was only there. I wasn't even there for the war. I wasn't there for the oil wells or for the scuds. So I couldn't have got anything from there. But let me just make sure, right?
Wait, you were there for 3 months, though, right? You were there in country for
Yeah,
3 months.
Yeah, and
yeah.
the oil wells were on fire back then.
Oh, they
You got
were.
there in
Yeah,
August, September, October, and you were there during the shit.
yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I, but I was in Bahrain, and but yeah, it all traveled, I guess, and but I didn't know that. Honestly, I didn't know that. I was pretty isolated when it came to that kind of stuff. Although in my letters that I write, I knew a lot of shit. I mean, I knew about freaking airplanes that were crashing in Germany, and I don't know how I knew all this stuff. But it's weird to think about how you found out stuff before the internet. But so so yeah, um, so I went to a study, and at first I thought it was at the VA, but in doing some more research, I found out it was a DoD study, to look into what was going on with Gulf War veterans. And so I went to Fort Hamilton in 1992, and they did a whole bunch of tests on me, and did an exam, blah blah blah, and at the end of the appointment, this lady, and her name was Linda Laura. That's the only thing I can remember about her. She said, "Well, you've got it, Gulf War illness, Gulf War syndrome. You've got it. We don't know what it is. We've got your information. We're trying to figure it out, and once we find out, we'll give you a call." Right. And so I'm 22, man, and I'm 23 at that point, and the rash went away, and so I just went on living life. I just was like, okay, that's weird. Hopefully nothing else happens. If any rashes happen, that's my mindset. I was just thinking, it's going to be another rash, right? Um, so didn't have any rashes at first, but then moved down to Georgia. Got transferred down here. This is Atlanta. Atlanta is Delta's hub, main headquarters. Um, and I started going to the doctor because I started having pain. I started having breathing issues. Started having stomach issues. Um, all these things started happening, and it was real slow at first, and it was weird too because I thought it's just I'm just an idiot, man. And so I thought, I must be just getting older because all these old people always complain about how their body starts hurting when they get older. Not
Yeah.
knowing that it's not supposed to happen when you're 23. That's something that happens when you're like
Right.
45, 40,
Right.
50, right? So I
Yeah.
just started making these assumptions, right? And but I'd still go to the doctor, and they, do tests on me, and they come back negative, right? And so, we can't figure it out. Here's here's some pain meds, try ibuprofen, whatever, blah blah blah. And so it just progressively got worse, got worse, got worse, got worse. And then in 2009, um, I remember I was at work and I bit into a sandwich, and when I swallowed the sandwich, all the skin in the back of my throat came off, and
Oh,
Wow.
and it was very painful, right? And so I went to a ear, nose, and throat doctor. They were trying to figure out what was going on, and then I'd start getting these blisters inside my mouth, and skin started falling off inside my mouth, and this went on for about 6 months, and then I started having this little scab on the top of my head, right, and it started growing, and then one night in I think it was February of 2010. Basically almost all the skin on my scalp fell off, and in my mouth it just all just peeled off, man, just the top layer of my skin. Extremely painful. So I ended up in the hospital for a little over a week, and it was a dermatological emergency. You don't hear about that very often, but that's what happened. And they ended up figuring out it was an autoimmune disease called pemphigus vulgaris, which is something that is very rare. It is something that typically only happens in elderly people. So it's even more rare in younger people. And so I'm in my 30s at this point, or yeah, maybe just turned 40. Um, and so I ended up, having this rare autoimmune disease that affected the skin. And so my dermatologist, who was one of the best, he was in Atlanta, and actually the Mayo Clinic tried to recruit him, and he turned him down. He's just great doctor, great guy, Dr. Rachel. He ended up treating me for this pemphigus. Meanwhile, I'm still dealing with pain. I'm still dealing with stomach issues. I'm still dealing with, all this other crazy crap, sleep issues, breathing issues, asthma. And so I was put on high doses of steroids, almost wanted to kill myself because it was just messed up. It messed up my brain, and so still dealing with that today. I have to go see him every 6 months. He actually moved out to Texas, San Antonio, and fortunately, like I said, I work for Delta Airlines, so I'm very fortunate and have flight benefits. So I go out and fly out to Texas to see my doctor, and I make it a day trip. And I go out there in the morning, rent a car, go to see him, and he's in Kerrville. So I fly into San Antonio, and then hop on a plane and head back if there's any open seats. I've gotten stuck in San Antonio before.
Okay, so I want to ask you this. So do you still have problem with the skin falling out, or is
it's
that
under control right
okay?
now with medication. I got to take an immune suppressant, and
Has the VA
so yeah, it's under.
recognized it?
Yes, fortunately,
Good.
last year. So that's
Okay.
another story. So um, after that pemphigus started, I ended up having to go to the hospital because of pain as well. I had a extreme flare up, if you will, of pain, and I actually thought I was going to die, man. It was bad, and so I was in the hospital for that, and when that kind of calmed down, I remember coming home and my wife asking me, she was like, "Do you think any of this stuff is related to your time in the Gulf?" You know, like I said, this is like at this point it was 2011. That was when the pain thing happened, and so I was like, I don't know, So I go online and I go to the VA website, I look up Gulf War syndrome or illness or whatever it's called. And man, I read all of the, how it lists all the
Yeah.
different symptoms, and I had like 80% of it, man. I started crying. I literally started crying. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that all this shit that I was going through was related to being in the Gulf War. Because again, I was like, I was only there for 60 days, man. How is that possible? But I mean, I know how it's possible now. But back then, it's like it was a mystery, and so I go through this thing, and then I call, it says, if you want to, I think it was if you want to file a claim or some shit, call the VA. So I called the VA, right? And they start, because I'm again, man, I'm ignorant to how all this stuff works. And so I call them up. I remember this specifically. And the lady on the other line, she was like, "Are you are you calling to file a claim?" And I was like, I'm calling because I match like 80% of these Gulf War illness diseases that you guys have on your website, you know? And and she goes, "Are you calling to file a claim?" And she just keeps repeating that, man. And I'm like, I just need some help. I
Right.
need some help because, I don't know what's going on. I have all of these symptoms. I have all these health issues now, and I was in the Persian Gulf, and it's showing up on your website. What the hell am I supposed to do? She's like, "Are you calling to file a claim?" And I was like, "Lady, you need to tell me what this message is between the lines, And I started crying on the phone with her, and she finally says, she goes, "You want to file a claim?" And I was like, "Okay." So I started the process, right? And and so I didn't know about VSOs, nothing, man. I just was like, "Oh, you file a claim with the VA, they're going to take care of you, right?" And
Shit.
and so yeah, so yeah. I mean, I'm just telling you, man. I was completely oblivious. I trusted, the system. I trusted the VA. I trusted the Air Force. I trusted the U.S. government. And and so you know, I ended up
Whoops.
through circumstance. Yeah, I ended up through circumstance finding out we actually got my wife took a wrong. Somebody called our house and it was a wrong number, and it was a VSO calling for another veteran, right? And it wasn't even the VSO in my town, in my county, and and just in the conversation somehow my wife says, "My husband's trying to file with the VA," and she goes, "Oh, he needs to get with the VSO," and kind of walk through the process with my wife. And so I ended up getting with the VSO, here in my county. um, and submitted all my paperwork, my freaking medical records that thick, um, all that jazz, right? Like waited 3 years of something, denied on everything, right? And and so filed an appeal, um, waited another 3 years or whatever the hell it was, denied, right? And so second appeal was to go before a judge in either on a conference call or go to Washington, and I was like, I'm going to fucking Washington.
There you go.
So so I ended up hiring an attorney, a VA attorney up in Washington, because again, I'm an idiot and I didn't know what else to do, and I was very frustrated at that point because I was kept getting denied, and it was very obvious that it was related, and so went before the judge. Great, great judge, I gotta say. He was just very empathetic. He pushed it back to Atlanta VA to review it again. They denied it again, everything, and so I appealed again. Went before the same judge, and this was during the pandemic. In I think it was 2021, and then he actually overrode everything and got it approved.
Good for him.
And so, yeah, so I guess that's kind of rare actually as well, but it was such a compelling case.
Believe it or not, it's not. Usually when you
Really?
go up in front of these judges, the judges will. Usually the judges will. You know, I have a guy that I talk to all the time. He went in front of a judge, and you know, he fell 30 foot off of I think he was in the Marines, fell 30 foot down, broke his ankle.
Mm-hmm.
And now he had to have hip surgery. And one doctor says it's because, you know, your foot was messed up and the way you walked hurt your hips. And
Mm-hmm.
the VA said, no, this, and this. And that judge was like, no bullshit. I want him to go see an orthopedic specialist. And they're like, okay. They didn't even send him that, man. That judge is pissed. And so he'll get awarded. But them judges don't put up with their shit. And that's one thing I'm hearing more and more. I don't know if I've ever heard of anybody being denied in front of a judge.
Yeah, he went through the process. He didn't deny me. But he sent it back to Atlanta to give him another chance, you know, and they just denied it again. And so he went back and you know, the second hearing he approved everything. And then, so this is 2021, and then they actually didn't assign the percentages until 2022.
What?
And so it was just last year, man, that I finally got approved. It was an 11-year process to fight and get approved. And
did they
and even then,
you?
yeah, they did. They did,
Good.
Fortunately.
They should.
And you know, I mean, in my opinion, it's like they should backdate me to 1992 because they told me back then that I had it, right? Well, you know, we moved
don't
like
fight
a gazillion times. Yeah. We moved like a gazillion times. I lost the paperwork, you know, and I can't find any records, man. I've tried to request it and they said they can't find it, but whatever, you know.
When I got out, I was diagnosed back in the early 90s too with Gulf War illness. Okay.
Right.
But when I got off the ship, I had digestive system disorder I was connected with. I had kidney stones I was connected with. I was connected with a GERD. I was, you know, like 6 things. And I didn't know you had to go out and give it to the VA to give it to them. But when they denied me with almost all of it in the 90s. I didn't get mine approved in like 2000 until 2022. I didn't get mine approved. So I feel like, wait a second.
Yeah.
It's in my service record saying I am already connected with this. I gave it to them. Y'all denied me back then. So why shouldn't you have to go all the way back? That's how I feel about it also.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally, man.
I think they should.
You got more of a case than I do.
Well, I'm not going to fight them. I'm you know, the VA is what the VA is. I mean, I like most of my doctors, but I got to tell everybody this story. Today, I get a phone call, and I called John as soon as I got this damn phone call. It was out of Florida, and it was with Nova Research, and they're like, "Hey, you know, we're wanting to know if you want to come do a study and, you know, blood work. You can do it from there." And I'm like, "Hey, great. Yeah, sounds great." She goes, "Well, I got a few questions to ask you." And she's asked me, "Were you diagnosed with Gulf War? Yes. Were you diagnosed with this?" And she says, "Do you have any renal liver diseases?" I said, "No, I have renal kidney disease." She goes, "Oh, you can't do this study." And I said, "Well, why?" I just want to know why.
Right.
And she said, "Well, because it will make it a whole lot worse." But hold on. how is it going to make mine worse, but other Gulf War veterans out there that may not know they have renal kidney disease or renal or
Right.
anything wrong with their livers, or even if you have a good kidney and a good liver, uh, because they're going to
Right. You
raise
may
your
mess it up.
creatine really high.
Right.
That can mess up your kidneys. And so
Right.
my question to her is why would y'all do a study that can harm the vets? I'm wondering. Is I got hung up on, and I know
Really?
Nova.
She hung up on you?
Yes, I know Nova Institute. I know Jimmy from there, and me him talk, and I'm gonna send him a message because that makes no sense to me whatsoever to have any research being done that can harm any Gulf War vets. Because no matter what, as a Gulf War vet, you may not know your kidneys are screwed up or your liver
Right.
because the VA haven't ran them tests. I just
Right.
happen to get lucky because they don't normally run your renal kidney disease test. They don't normally run the because she's like, well, what's your EEGFR? And I said 64. She's like, no, 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 no. This will make it a lot worse. So I'm
Huh.
like,
Wow.
huh,
That's scary.
yes. And
Well, y-
I mean, for the most part, I do think we ought to do researches. And but I mean, right now, I'm kind of thrown back from that after what I heard
Right.
from doing any research where they're going to tell me to take something. It's just a test drug. No, I'm
Right.
sorry, not right now. I
Right.
mean, that scared the hell out of me.
Yeah. Yeah. That is scary. That's messed up.
well, it's pretty unnerving on a lot of different levels, and Wade, as mentioned before, we these research people, they get a significant amount of money from the government to do the research, trying to help or trying to figure out what specifically our issues, ours being Gulf War vets or any other vets for that matter, what our issues are. And in the meantime, now granted, the vast majority of us all raised our hands and say, hey, I volunteer to go into the service. And
Right.
therefore we sign on that infamous dotted line, and we're injected and exposed to a lot of variables. And in turn, as Olaf and all of us have experienced, various issues. And so we're going to say, okay, guinea pig us again to go in and just try random stuff on us so we can come to a conclusion. But and there, I'm not saying there aren't vets out there going to do it. Now, I think Wade said he doesn't mind doing it for under certain circumstances. And myself, I'm like, because
Yeah.
you've already been guinea pigged, okay? And
Right.
what monetary, I mean, if you're going to get your flights paid for, and if you're going to get some sort of decent compensation for it, because heavens knows what they're going to do to you, how that's going to affect you. If there's not whatever's considered in your mind a decent, acceptable compensation to do so, okay, that's up to you then. But if there's really no compensation, and they're saying, well, you're doing it for the better of your fellow veterans, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
but
That's just my
like the one they're doing in Washington D.C. Like I talked to Wade, they're actually doing a study up there that it is vitamins, but it's also nutrition health. Like they give you a card that has money on it. You go to Whole Foods. They pay for your flight up there and your flight back, but you stay up there for 2 weeks. You got to cook and eat the way, but for inflammation. Oh, that
Right.
study, I agree with that because
Sure.
that will go into every VA. I like that idea.
Right.
And I think, I know guys, Washington is doing that. Everybody should try that. But if these research companies are getting that kind of money, and like, let's bring up Dr. Galam, her
Yeah.
research, is about vitamins. Her research is about how the VA is treating vets. That's that. But this was the first time I heard somebody say, yeah, no, you don't want to do this. And
Right.
And she couldn't really explain to me why. She just hung up the phone. It made,
Crazy.
and then she was like, maybe
Yeah.
later on down the line we'll do more researches with you. No.
Nah, just you could lose my number.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Actually, I was going
Insane.
to bring up Dr. Golem that you guys, I actually was listening to your podcast, and that's how I listened to the podcast you did with her, the couple of them there, and really impressed with her and the work that she's doing. And actually, I signed up for that mitochondrial DNA one that they're doing.
Oh.
And so I actually started that process. And then I also told them that I would do the CoQ10 because that's, there's a lot of research already on CoQ10 and the
oh yeah,
benefits of CoQ10.
yeah.
And so I thought, I'm very willing to do that one as well. They haven't started recruiting for that one yet. They told me, but they put my name down as somebody to contact when they are ready to recruit. So,
Right.
Yeah.
And
So,
I feel
so
like
humor
she's
me.
fighting for us. I feel like she is fighting for us. I
I
really
agree.
do.
I
So
agree.
are you able to do that? I'm assuming from home then, Olaf, or you
Yeah.
got to fly somewhere?
No, you don't have to fly anywhere. For the mitochondrial one, or as far as I could tell, the chondrial one, they're just going to send. I have to do a questionnaire, and they're going to send me a kit to do a swab, and then that's going to be it for that one. And then they're also
Well,
going to
see,
give
now
me
that
access to the DNA because it's a third party that does the DNA study, and then they send the results to Dr. Golem, and so I'm going to have full access to all the DNA information on me, right? And so that's
okay.
pretty cool. But
And you
it's
should.
it's just
Have
yeah.
you looked up how many cases what you have to what Gulf War veterans have? Have you ever looked up, say, well, how many people in the Gulf War community have this?
I
That is a
it's so
really
weird, man.
uh,
I I have I have I feel like and I'm excited about this podcast and some of this other stuff that's going on because I've always felt like I'm just kind of doing this alone, and it's my fault for a lot of it because I just don't. Well, it is and it isn't because I don't know where to go, man. I go to I'm on these Facebook groups, right? But I hate to say it, man. A lot of it that I see is just people bitching, about the VA and stuff, and yeah, I mean it's true. I mean I don't want to disparage that. That's a legitimate gripe, but it's like it's not. I think you said it on the last podcast, Kevin, that we're not united as Gulf War
we're
vets,
not.
and really talking to each other and understanding what everybody's going through and it's weird, man. It's really
It is.
weird,
We,
It
and
well,
is.
there is a lot of, like you said, Olaf, there is a lot of bitching that goes on these various podcasts pertaining to those who have served. And what we all want is we want information as to what helps
right,
you to get through life without the pain. And
right,
what helps one person isn't necessarily going to help the next, but at least it's a start. And we can
sure,
all bitch because we all negativity. I mean, I get it because we all
yeah,
it's sour grapes, and we understand that. But
sure,
ultimately, what have you done that perhaps I can try and see if it helps
right,
me, and vice versa? And we share that information, which Kevin and we try and do our level best. We
But I
yeah,
I
will.
I, I want to say this though. Discarded Vet has a podcast that he's doing now. It's I believe on Mondays, if right, uh, Jason, and he's gonna put it out on a Facebook on Mondays. I think they go live and Twitter. But he's not just dealing with Gulf War vets. He's dealing with what's going on in this world
mm,
about everything that's in our foods, what this and what's that,
right,
and,
right,
and you know, and Tuesday nights. Okay, it's Tuesday nights and not Monday. Sorry, and it's at like my time, 8 p.m. and everything, because he's on Pacific time. But and he's in agreement. Too many vets are arguing. None of us. I mean, it doesn't matter what war you fought. Vietnam got just as screwed as we did. Iraqi vets got screwed as we did. Afghanistan vets got screwed as we did. That on Go For Truth Seekers, he's gonna. I think he has it up there, and he's going after it all. I mean, he's like gonna tackle everything that me. I'm focused on Go For Veterans, Desert Storm,
sure,
and everything. He's going after the whole shit storm, as I would call it, and which is good because it needs to pull more vets to come in and everything. And so I did want to say that because I did watch it, and it is intriguing to know how many vets out there that just argue and argue and argue and argue. That's why I don't like posting a lot of articles and stuff, because most vets don't read them. They just skip right through them.
Right.
If you talk about it, if you're podcasting about it, and like he's doing a documentary more than a podcast, but the more vets can come in and say, hey, you know what? Look here, guys, we're not alone. And I mean, like one day I'm hoping this explodes throughout the world. I mean, heck, I think Iran is our third largest listener area. I mean, think about that. And I think it's Europe and then United States. So we're around the world. Are we great and big? No. Are we big enough right now? To me, no. We need this needs to get bigger. More for the fact, and that's why I tell everybody, oh wait, this hand. Follow us on Facebook, go to YouTube, subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your families. The more the word gets out, the more people start understanding this shitstorm that is going on through our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to go on with our kids' bodies and everybody's bodies who keep going into the military until they stop it, until the United States government that will wear them pretty little shiny pins with American flag and they say how much they love us veterans will get off their dead asses and do something about this. I mean, I know a lot of people are really upset and mad that Joe Biden said, he thinks that his son died because of the Gulf War. Well, shit, he had brain cancer. He was out there. I mean, he may have, but at least he got it talking.
Right.
I mean, go ahead, John.
And well, I was going to say one of the interesting, every time Olaf, like yourself, I find it interesting that you say you made the comment, well, I was only in theater for like 3 months, and it doesn't the length of time that you're in country, I think, is irrelevant. Is if you were there when things were happening, there was exposure that take place. And even before, we have a gentleman that Kevin and I are working with, trying to figure out the best approach, because he says, hey, I was never deployed there, but I got a bunch of shots and I feel the same things you guys are feeling. So there's a lot of variables that go into all of our situations. We're all of us are different. And to back earlier a few minutes ago when we were talking about signing up or not signing up for research like Dr. Glom, I wouldn't mind doing something like that, the understanding the mitochondria or stuff like that. It's where they want to put more stuff into my body and see how that I have a problem with. But just to study what's already there, I have no problem with that. That's a different ball game.
I do believe it. And that's like the patches that we talk about.
Right.
You know what? I don't care what anybody out there says. Right. That it's been my savior. It
Right.
is literally, it has helped me out more than any medication the VA, I should call them VA. The VA
Yeah.
has given me.
Right.
That's right, Nate, term for VA. VA. But I mean,
Nice.
it really has. And I
Right.
mean, and it's so funny because I do push the patches. It does look like that the nonprofit and everything is almost over with and coming to where we can start getting patches out to people. And me and John came up with a system how we're going to do it, which was more John's idea about how we're going to package it and send it out. But I know for 110% fact that if it wasn't for the patches, I wouldn't be walking as good as I do. I wouldn't be feeling
Right.
as good as I do. And that's
That's
why
great.
that's why guys, I'm not pushing this on you as a sell. I'm pushing this on you to try it. It's a 30-day money back guarantee. I mean,
Right.
if you suffer from chronic pain, if you suffer from digestive, it's stimulating your stem cells. People go to Mexico and pay $10,000-$20,000 for stem cell injections. This is stimulating
Right.
your own stem cells. And I mean, just I wish they would go. Everybody can go look. It's www.go4sideeffectspatches.com. Boy, that's a long word. But guys, Olaf, thanks for coming on the show. John,
Yeah.
always a pleasure seeing that cute bald head of yours
Oh,
that you slicked up, because I
likewise.
can tell you just
What
cut
about
it.
mine?
You got some on the side, brother. But
Yeah. That's true.
we are now about to go into the after show. I want everybody to have a good night, and we're going to have some fun in the after show. Thank you for listening to Go For Side Effects. If you have a story or you would like to share or just come on with any comments or questions, please email me at kevinsimon@go4sideeffects.com.